crash on the laptop last night. So what I'm going to do to start off with is just give you not talk about each individual contact, because I think the videos that are out there that are on the YouTube ARISS channel are actually the best records of those, because it was about the kids and about the students actually taking on a project, doing something, owning it, and it's theirs. So I'm going to leave that sort of side of it alone. But what I am going to do is just run through a couple of things, a couple of some of the major highlights that we had with it. And
oh, I knew I shouldn't have done this.
Yeah. And just take you through some of the fun bits that we had as well. Plus, give you a little bit of insight into why in the UK we've actually got this central coordinated team that do ARISS contacts. You've seen us getting the station up and running and taking the antennas up and down, and I actually think this one's a bit of a record because we've only taken it down once on the whole weekend, so that's a bit of a major achievement for us. Right, so everyone probably quite aware of the banner. It can go between Principia and Principia. I got my knuckles wrapped on that one once or twice. But everything that we did was very much with the full backing of both the UK Space Agency, who were absolutely fantastic in supporting us, and also the European Space Agency. And one of the great successes that we've had is actually building this link in, and it's already been recognised throughout quite a bit of the ARISS community that it's probably the most integrated outreach programme for any astronaut that's been done throughout the world. So we are immensely pleased and proud of that result. So last year, when I was standing here, we had announced that these were going to be the 10 schools that were going to be taking part in the ARISS programme. There was a mixture. We had some private schools, we had some public schools, we had some prep schools, and we also had one primary school. And each and every one of them was completely and utterly different in what happened at it, what went on at it, and the outcomes of it. Now, the original intention, working with the scheduler across in the US, was that we wanted to try and minimize our traveling. Great wish. But we also wanted to focus heavily on, we only wanted to do direct contacts. The actual impact of a direct contact on everybody present is absolutely phenomenal and is much, much easier to explain, even to the press, the difference between what we're doing on site with all the equipment versus a telebridge. So we've clearly stated that our preference in the UK, and we were backed up with this on the UK Space Agency, because as you heard last night, Libby knew what ARISS was, and when I eventually got to speak to Libby in 2014, that was pretty much one of her first requirements. No telebridges, you're doing directs. The only problem with the direct is that the space station has to be flying over the UK at that time. It has to be within school hours. The astronaut has to be available on a schedule, and the school has to be available. And it was manic. It was really, really hard. We got the first couple of contacts done. The first one at Sandringham, you saw the two girls yesterday, Jessica and Polly. They were absolutely brilliant. The school itself was, I think it was the first coming together of the team in eight or so years to carry out an actual contact. and we were coming up from work, coming from personal appointments and everything, all descending on the school. The headmaster did a superb job in pulling everything together. Yep, we had our challenges, but if everything was absolutely flawless, there's no sort of excitement in it. And at the end of the day, we were trying to bring the message that actually we're using the raw technology of pretty much everything that they, what have I done with it? There it is. That they talk about. And one of the easiest things to say to them, and we got them sort of asking a few questions or answering a few questions, was, you know, how many radios are in the room? And quite a number of people would say, that big one. But actually, there's about 4 or 5 in each and every one of these things that everybody's got. So the route we ended up doing was Sandringham. Then we had a nice couple of weeks break while the station, because we did Sandringham very early in the morning, which tends to be the end of the daytime passes in the UK. Then we went to the Royal Masonic School for Girls in Rickmansworth. Then we went to Bristol. Then we went to Norwich. Then we went to Powys. So we just went ping pong, ping pong. We then had a nice 5 or so week break, I think it was, before we did in just over 3 weeks, St Richard's College, Wellesley, Derby, Ashfield, and then the King's School. So we were physically running around the country. To give you an example, the Wellesley School contact was done on a Saturday morning. The Derby High School was done on the following Monday morning. So we were ripping down stations, up the motorway, setting other stations back up again. But I think it sort of paid off very nicely for us. Now, the one thing I do want to sort of say is that an awful lot of this couldn't have been done without support. I've talked about the UK Space Agency. The other bit of support that we had was that we obviously needed quite a bit of the kit. We had a lot of the ARISS kit from before, but one of the key things that we didn't have around was the radio, because historically it's been a case of Howard, Carlos, or whoever else would be bringing their own kit along to do this. So in association with Martin Lynch and Kenwood, they loaned us a TS-2000X, which we then used in all of the contacts, and that's exactly the radio that you can see in the station. The other bit of kit that we borrowed was this little beast. This is the 3.8 metre dish at Goonhilly that was loaned to us by Satellite Applications Catapult, and also with support of the Goonhilly Earth Station company down at Goonhilly itself. Pretty much all the video we streamed from Principia itself came from this setup, and the one person that I'm seriously going to credit with picking up the ham TV side of things is Noel and his team, because they did a superb job on that one. And I think, as we heard from Libby last night, that was the thing that really brought these contacts home as being really, really special. The other piece of portable kit that we borrowed was this portable antenna. Portable. Now, to give you some idea about what we used to do, was that Howard and Carlos, in the many years that they had been doing it, had a tripod system that was taken and carried up and put on the roof of the buildings that we would go to. Now, I think it's the next photo. Now, sometimes those roofs aren't exactly the most accessible. However, at one school, Rickmansworth, that's a dirty great big clock tower, but the school actually built a complete secure platform for us on top of the roof, so that we could actually take the kit up there and set it up and secure it and tie it down, and the groundsmen and everything at Rickmansworth were just phenomenal. And we generally find this to be the case, that sort of the schools, some of the schools would rise to the challenge. It was, we need to go there. Our limitation is we've got 50 meters of cable between there and the radio. So we need to find a way of doing it. And they built that up and set it up. However, doing it that way takes a huge amount of time. So John G7ACD had a Versa tower in his back garden, somewhere probably, and this time last year offered his support, and we eventually ended up, when we heard that we were going to be extending and going for all 10 schools, we asked John along on the team, and he did the running around the country with us with this thing stuck to the back of his vehicle, and massively simplified the setup procedures. However, I think the phrase is that I think it was a minimum of 3 times every site that we had to wind that thing up and then wind it down and drop it, fix something, bring it back up, go back up, and keep checking it. Because one of the other things that we did was that we had a rigorous approach, that each and every one of us on the team had a role. We knew exactly what we had to do, but we also had somebody else double checking us. And my double check was Carlos. and yeah, I maintained my nickname with him of Continuity Ciaran. But we basically double-checked everything, every time, and triple-checked it, quadruple-checked it. But still, every single site, we had new technical problems that we had not seen at the previous ones. The biggest one is coax cables and the connectors. I made a slight reference as to why we've got this central team. Most people who've got a station of this capability probably don't like dismantling it, assembling it, then dismantling it again and again, because you do get problems. The number of times that we replaced N-type connectors or EcoFlex connectors is just not worth saying. But we were constantly double-checking things, working out, looking at return loss, looking at reflected power, and basically getting it down as low as possible. To the point that you saw some of it going on there, that as we were using, or in the station, as we were using the station, we would find a problem. We weren't particularly happy with it. So with the use of all the test kit that we had with us as well, we were able to gradually work out what the problem was, and basically get us back into a working scenario. But definitely the team pulled a superb rabbit out of the hat in the modular approach we had to this. All the kit fitted in my car. John carried this with him. Noel, Phil and Frank took most of the video stuff, and Carlos had all the test equipment, and Graham came around and just kept a watch on us and kept us going and amused. But the key thing was, it wasn't about us. It wasn't about us doing all this and wanting the praise and everything for it. It was about the students, and we saw some superb results at the schools. This particular one is Norwich, and they had gone to the trouble of creating a flag with all the main schools in Norwich that had actually contributed to the contact, and the Principia, so we flew it on the end of the top of the tower as well. That school, although there was the lead school of the City of Norwich schools, also involved 32 schools, I think it was, around Norfolk itself, and actually had something in the order of about 25,000 students watching the contact itself, and it was actually a really good fun one. This was the one that we had one student sort of ask Tim, you know, what do you do if there's a knock on the door? And Tim just superbly came back saying, well, as far as he was aware, there were 6 people in low Earth orbit. If there was a knock on the door, he wasn't answering it. Now, we saw a little bit of this picture last night. Actually, I'm going to do a slightly different video first, if I can find it. Yeah, this one. So, Libby made reference to the fact that the ham video was some of the, or the thing that really added to the contacts. But actually, the first time we received ham TV was actually the contact before at Rickmansworth. Now, as she said, she had commissioned the ham TV transmitter, but as with anything in space, there's always allocated time to do things, and the ham TV became an add-on to a normal ARISS contact. And the consequence of that was that instead of scheduling 1 block of time, you had to schedule 2 blocks of time on the astronaut's timeline. And that became quite a difficult job. And we saw it because even though we did an awful lot of ham TV, we only had 2 recognized formal ham TV sessions from NASA. What happened for Sandringham was that some of the experiments that used the shared power supply were running, so it was out of the question for us. But at Rickmansworth, Tim actually spent quite a considerable amount of his own time finding the relevant equipment on the station. As I was heading down the night before the contact, I think it was, I had an email pop up on the phone from Tim saying, "I've found it, I've got it set up, we'll give it a go." We still didn't know if it was going to work. It had never been used. Outside the commissioning, the ham TV had never been used. And the upshot of it was, and you can see the thought processes going from the eye to the brain with me here, but this was a video. It's a little bit blurred, I do apologize. The contact is in progress at this point. A couple of the guys on this side were aware of what was coming in. You can see Carlos sticking his hand up, and we had elaborate signals going as to who had the audio. And it popped up. And that was the first time. And for those of us that were involved in it, that was the magical moment. However, we topped it, the next contact, because what we went on to do was actually, for the first time ever, give an instruction or a request to the astronaut, who fulfilled it there and then. "Hi Tim, we've got you on ham TV, give us a wave." And that was the result. And that one we're especially proud of. Part of the reason as well is SEMA, this girl, is an Afghan or is of Afghan origin. She came to the country just over 3 years ago, couldn't speak a word of English, and she stood up, asked the question, and there's a clip of her being interviewed by BBC West, Southwest, and it's absolutely brilliant. If you could get the opportunity to go and see it, she's just completely blown away by it, and she regarded it as the best day of her life so far. A lot has been said about some of the contacts and the difficulty in some of the receptions that we've had. The big difference between this set of contacts and the last ones that we did in the UK was that the location of the radio station on the ISS has changed. It used to be on Zvezda, or the service module, which is towards the back of the station, and was being pushed out with a Kenwood of about 25 watts. With the advent of the Columbus module, the ham radio station for what's called the USOS crew section moved to Columbus, which is at the front. but it's on a radio that only gives about 5 watts output. And it comes into this antenna with a lovely bent radial just there. And this results in some very weird radiation patterns that we have to try and counteract whenever we're actually trying to plan the contacts. But it goes to show that actually it's the people on the ground, it's the ARISS team who have to work these problems out, and we try to use that as an example to the students to say, we don't just rely on everybody else. This is us understanding the science, the technology, the problems, and actually trying to do something about it. What's next? Done that one. Right, probably the cutest contact of them all. We went up to Otley, and part of the reason I want to mention this is that we always look at ARISS contacts potentially as STEM, science and technology. What does it offer other subjects? Now, we all know about STEM, but there's also this other thing called STEAM now coming out, which is science, technology, engineering, arts, and mathematics. And when I got the list of questions from the primary school in Otley, there was one that stuck out, and it just said, how can I come and see you? And in my mind, that sort of became all right, that has to be question number 1 coming from a primary school. I didn't actually realise at the time that the little girl that wanted to ask the question was 4 years old and became one of the youngest ever to do it. But she also had difficulty with speech. So what she had been doing with her teachers all year was working on her speech therapy. And this became her big moment of actually standing there in front of a microphone. Yep, she took 2-3 times longer than anybody else would take to ask the question. But she asked the question, clutching her teddy bear, holding my hand, and pulled it off magnificently. And she was absolutely delighted. And it's about that sort of inspiration as well that we're trying to do with the ARISS contacts. Now, we also had Tim waving back on us at this one, and probably one of the cutest second pictures is this thing. So just after I had said to Tim, we've got you on ham TV, give us a wave, there were 300 or so kids in the hall sitting on the floor going like this, thinking they could see him as well. But it just goes to show the impact of the video. It really brings home something magical about the ARISS contacts and the ham TV that pretty much no other outreach program has the capability of doing. And we had an absolute blast that day. So the other bits that I wanted to sort of show you as well, and this was me.
Thank you, Ciaran, and I know that you'd like to thank the rest of your team as well.
Pause that a second. One of the other nice things about working with the ARISS team, not just here but also across in the States in NASA, is that usually the lead for a country gets the opportunity to be able to converse with the astronaut in space, and that was exactly what I was doing with Tim. So I was in email conversations with him, sort of checking things out. He would ask me how the contacts went. I would typically send him a photo of the students who'd been asking the questions, just to give him a little bit of an understanding of what he'd actually been doing. But I knew I could never have done absolutely any of this work without a handful of really key people. Carlos, Howard, Graham, Noel, Frank, Phil, John, and Wouter, throwing him into the mix for the last over itself. And one of the things I did was I asked Tim to acknowledge that and reference it for me, because not many people can say they've had their name quoted to them from space. And the result after we had the the Ottery contact.
Thank you, Ciaran, and I know that you'd like to thank the rest of your team as well. So on behalf of Ciaran, thank you to Carlos, Howard, Graham, Noel, Frank, Phil and John for all the help throughout the mission with the wonderful ARISS contacts. Enjoy your day, everybody, and signing out from the International Space Station. On behalf of Ciaran, thank you.
And that was it. And that was the end of the ARISS contacts. It started last year with me asking a few questions of a few people here. I think I got a bit of a reputation of saying, wouldn't it be nice if we could do X, Y, and Z? And we gradually evolved, but we got to the point with the team that we could actually say those sort of things. Somebody would go off, and the next thing we knew, we had that being present and part of the contact. So I want to thank my team superbly. There's absolutely nothing I can say that records my appreciation greater than I had an absolute blast. I really enjoyed working with everybody. We all pulled together, and I think we demonstrated just how we can use amateur radio as a tool to inspire children and students and basically take the hobby forward, but at the same time giving massive positive benefit to the UK Space Agency's outreach programme, which I think has been exceptional for an ESA astronaut. So thank you very much, guys. I thoroughly appreciate all the effort. It was hard work. I know several of you had to take time off work and everything, but it just shows the dedication of what this team can do. And I'm immensely proud to be part of it and to be running it. So thank you very much.
Right, thank you, Ciaran. Are there any questions? Yes.
I was just wondering if Tim had any QSOs with other people than the ARISS team.
Okay. No. And there's potentially a really simple reason for this. 99% of the astronauts that go up to the space station are not radio amateurs. They obtain a radio amateur license to comply with some FCC rules, but they're not radio amateurs. But what they want to do is make use of being able to talk directly to students. Now, we had asked Tim if he was prepared to do that, but on the basis of the volume of time, of his own time that he had spent actually getting things set up, enhancing our own ARISS contacts with the ham video, it wasn't right to either push it or request it any further, so we didn't. Yep, you know, there's lots of requests, and I had many emails from many people across from the website saying, you know, complaining he's not a proper amateur, he's not tough. He's an astronaut, he's employed to do astronaut work. He does this as a sideline to help outreach and to help inspire, and that's where I think we need to keep the focus on. Yes, he made use of the amateur radio equipment, and yes, we've got a responsibility to try and help the astronauts to maximize their impact from space. And I think if we try and focus too heavily on it must be amateur radio, and we have to put amateur radio first, we lose the impact of what we do. And I'm more than happy to stay with the level of involvement that we had from Tim.
Right, thank you, Ciaran. If anybody's got any further questions on this, I'm sure you'd be willing to answer them during the break, Ciaran. Right. Okay. Thank you very much again.